Welcome to this episode of the Dropout Multi Millionaire Podcast, where we talk about tactical business strategy, building high-performance sales teams, and growing your business. If you're ready to break free from the status quo and join the ranks of the mavericks, the rebels, and the renegades who refuse to conform and instead build multi-million-dollar businesses, then buckle up, because here we go. We are back with the Dropout Multi Millionaire Podcast. My name's Brian Will. And today I have a special guest, Steve Beecham, on the line with me here, and we are going to be talking about business today. So real quick, I want to tell you about Steve. Not only is he my friend, lives in my hometown, but Steve has a list of accomplishments here that I can't even read all the way through. So I'm going to have to hit the highlights. And if there's anything I missed good, Steve, you're going to have to jump in and say, "Hey, what about the time I rescued the Queen from drowning in the Nile River?" So here's Steve. 40 years of sales and entrepreneurship in various industries. I didn't know you were that old, Steve. He's got 3 business books. So do I. So we're kind of tracking there. What's Your Buzz? I got that one off my bookshelf here. Bass Ackward Business, The Power of Helping Without Hustling. I like that. And The Tapes We Play in Our Head. Great title. I actually have Steven Tyler's book downstairs called Does the Noise in My Head Bother You? I love that title. He's the president and founder of Hometown Mortgage in Alpharetta, Georgia. Been doing that for 25 years. Past president of the Georgia Association of Mortgage Brokers. Who's Who in Finance. Atlanta Business Chronicle top 5 loan officers. Let's see what else here. I got to skip like 3 or 4 paragraphs. Used to own a clothing store. Let's see. He's an engaging speaker, storyteller. Has spoken to sales and marketing organizations for Edward Jones, Merrill Lynch, Travelers, Prudential, John Hancock, Mass Mutual, Wells Fargo, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Steve, you make me look like a chump over here. How you doing today?
I'm fantastic, man. It's a great day to be alive in Alpharetta, Georgia.
You always know Steve's coming because he's got this bright red old pickup truck that he drives around town. What kind of truck is that, Steve?
Well, it's a 66 Chevy. So, there's a whole story behind that. I used to, when I had my first got in the mortgage business, I bought a H2 Hummer. And I logoed it up, and I'd go to the ballpark with my kids, and all the kids would run over there. And then I get to meet their mom and dads, and then I wore that darn thing out. And then I didn't do anything for a while. And then I bought a truck, and now the old guys come see me instead of the young guys.
I used to have an H2. I love that truck. I absolutely loved it. I can remember when I bought it, I was hauling my boat one day. And I hooked the boat up to the back of it, and I was going to pull it from Tennessee back down here to Georgia. When we pulled up out of the marina, and I was driving away, I looked down at the little gauge. It gives you your miles per gallon, and it was like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. I was getting 2 miles to the gallon. Like in a 20-gallon tank, I'm thinking, I got to stop for gas every 20 minutes. This is going to be crazy.
Gosh. But it was fun to drive, wasn't it?
It was comfortable. I actually love that thing. My ex-wife got that in a divorce, unfortunately, so she liked it better than I did, so I lost the Hummer. So real quick, Steve, you have a huge business background. You do a lot of speaking. Tell me about some of the businesses you've owned. What have you done in the past?
Well, I guess the main thing is what's interesting in you probably and anybody else that's been in several businesses. The cool thing is when you're doing a business, and then you leave that business and go to the next business, it's amazing how much of the stuff from the previous one you can bring to the next one, so more businesses actually, I think, make you a little better business guy. But, I remember the first job I took was selling cars. And after about 3 months, I realized they did lie. And so I said, I can't do this.
It lasted a week when I tried it, so for 3 months, you were better than me.
3 months. I think that was maybe when my little base salary ran out, but I got into clothing business and
wait. I gotta tell you a story. I go to sell cars. This is my funny car story. And it was Nissan. I was selling for Nissan cars. My buddy got me this job, and I'm probably 20 years old at the time. One of the many jobs I got fired from. And I go in there and I get this person. He wants to buy a 300Z. If you remember the old 300Zs, that was like the car to buy back. And the guy came in, I talked to him for probably 34 minutes. And the guy's like, all right, sounds good. I'm going to take off. I'll get back with you later. And the guy walks out the door. And I walk over to my office and I hear on the intercom system, Mr. Will, please come to the manager's office. When I walk into the manager's office, he goes, what happened to your client? I said, oh, he's going to think about it. He's going to go home. He goes, why didn't you TO him? I'm like, TL him. I don't even know what that means. It means turnover, by the way. I said,
Yeah.
TL him. The guy wasn't ready to buy. He's going to, think about it. He's coming back. And he goes, I love this. This is the first time I've ever heard this. And I've used it so many times since. He goes, pack your shit, Skippy, and get out. Now, pack
You're
your
not
shit,
going to make
Skippy,
it.
and get out.
Yeah, that was the theory, right? If you walk out, you're never coming back, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the longer they can keep you there. I mean, that's so stupid when you think about it. It's just
It's,
absolutely insane.
yep.
But
High
anyway, so
pressure.
I didn't like that car business. And so then I got in the clothing business and then I thought I was smart after 2 years, and I convinced my dad to go in business with me, and we opened a clothing store, and we ran that for 8 years, and then I wasn't making any money, and I was working 6 days a week,
Wow. What kind of
and
clothes?
we had it was a men's and ladies traditional clothing store. So that was back when suits and sport coats and dress slacks and ties. Wasn't much sportswear like they do today.
Hmm.
They had a lot of, the inventory on suits is, about the most expensive clothing inventory you can get. But anyway, so we messed around with that for a while, and it just, it didn't lose any money, but it didn't really make any money. It just kind of paid me a manager salary, and I decided it was time to move on. I was about to get married, and I said, I got to get a real job. And anyway, I closed that down, and when I decided to close down, I had met this guy previously, and I called him. I said, hey, I'm gonna do it. He's like, oh man, let's do it. A going out of business sale. He said, you'll make a lot of money. Anyway, I made more money in 3 months going out of business than I made the previous 8 years that I was in the clothing business. And
Going out of business.
I learned more about the clothing business in 3 months than I did the whole time. And then I got in the business of doing going out of business sales. And that was a trip, because that's where I really learned that most people are in a hobby business. They're mostly doing a business because they like it and they think it's fine. And I realized that people buy stuff for their business because they like it. They've never done a market survey or anything to determine if anybody else likes it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they like it, everybody must like it, right? So that was
Yep.
a big
Yep.
lesson in that. And then the going out business helped me realize that you can't eat your inventory. If you get, you got to get your turns, you got to make it happen. It also showed me that if you buy right, you can sell right. I never really thought about that concept before. So there were some lessons there. And then I got into the recycling business because nobody was doing recycling. And I had read a couple articles that it was coming. So I was the first guy in North Fulton and Forsyth to pick up recycling. And then I realized that you couldn't make any money on recycling when I took a whole tractor trailer load of glass down there, and the guy gave me $40 and I had to pay the guy like 140 to deliver it. So then I started charging people for recycling, and nobody wanted to pay. So then I got into garbage business, and then I brought in a partner, and then I sold that. And that was the first business I'd ever sold. And I made a little money. I go, okay, well, that's kind of cool. And then I got into shutter business, the plantation shutter business. My best friend had a manufacturing facility, and he wanted to open up locations. So since I knew something about retail, we got into that, and I learned about expanding and more salespeople and doing all that. And then by accident, I got in the mortgage business, and I've been doing that 30 years, and that's really been fun. But I was able to take all those previous lessons and apply those to the mortgage business. So the mortgage business has been a good run for me. And now my son's in the business with me, and so he's taking what I'm doing and he's taking it to another level, and so he's doing really well. So that's
Well, how is the
kind of
mortgage business these days? Rates shot up. Now they're coming down a little bit. What's going on in that
yeah.
business?
Yeah, and that's to me, that's the weirdest thing about our business is that you can be doing everything you need to do, but you're really not in control. It's not like you've got this business that just goes on this projectile, right? We go like this,
Right.
and it has nothing to do with if you're, marketing or if you've got good relations or good staff. It's all about what's going on. It's like being a builder, right? You're either rich or you're poor. If you're rich, you're headed to poor. If you're poor, you're headed to rich. It's just whenever the cycle hits. So you learn to try to skim some money off the top during the good times to make it through the low times. And you learn how to set your business up to be able to do that. So that's been the big lesson for me on that.
And your son enjoys being in the business with you?
He does. And we're both very social people. So we have a marketing sort of presence. It's a very social presence. It's about being out in the community. It's about social media. And he's like me, he's not scared to do that. And that's kind of how we've, really how we've grown our business, and it's working for us.
Is it just the
So
two of you?
I talk a little bit about that too in a little bit. Basically, he and I are the two sales guys. We have another salesperson that's sort of a part-time person, but then we've got 3 staff people that support us. So we've learned how to set it up to where we can focus and spend our time on selling. Because it's like, I just had lunch with a guy and I was telling him, I was like, if I owned your insurance company, what do I want you doing every day? Or if you own my mortgage company, what do you want me doing every day? And this was a thing that I learned that was really helpful to me. Is like, I decided that if you call me, Brian, and you want me to do your loan, I thought about it. I said, how much time do I spend with you on that loan or working on that loan from the time you call me to the time you close? And my personal time is about an hour. So I said, okay, if I spend an hour a day doing a loan, and I did one a day, and I did 30 loans a month, I would be probably the biggest loan producer in the state of Georgia if I did 30 loans a month. So all I need is that 1 hour every day. So what do I do with the other 7 hours? And so if Brian Will owns Hometown Mortgage, what do you want me doing? If I'm your sales guy, you want me selling. And so I had to come to this thought process that says, if I'm not marketing those 7 hours to see when that 1 hour opportunity is going to present itself, then I'm really not spending my time wisely. And so that's been a big aha moment for me. And I teach a lot of people that, like this insurance agent, I'm like, that's what you need to be doing. If you wrote 1 deal a day and you wrote 30 deals a month, I mean, isn't that pretty good? He goes, yeah, I'd be doing really well. And I'm like, well, then the other 7 hours, if I own your company, I want your butt out there meeting people, right?
Right.
So that's kind of
Now, the
where
books you've written, are they kind of are any of the books you've written centered around that concept? And
a little bit.
you got 3 books out there, I think, or 2
Yeah.
and
So
3, and you
the
got one in the
first one,
works.
the first one I wrote, Bass Ackworth Business, what that book was about is I decided, I read a lot of marketing stuff like a lot of people have. And the thing that stuck with me, I think it was Zig Ziglar. If you help enough people get what they want, that some of them will help you get what you want. And I said, you know what? I hate cold calling. How can I just go whole hog into that to build a referral-based business? I don't want to do a lot of stuff in the mail and TV and radio and all that kind of stuff. I just want people to call me and say, Steve, so Brian told me to call you. What do I need to do? And that's what my whole focus on all my marketing is somebody to call me and not question my rate, not question my closing costs. They just like do my deal.
Right.
And because they know I'm going to take care of them, I'm going to do that. So the Bass Ackworth Business book was about, hey, this is different than what most salespeople teach you to do. This is not about going in there, meeting the prospect, getting the prospect list, hammering them, trying to close the deal, blah, blah, blah. This is about giving first and hoping that some of those people will send it back.
Mm-hmm.
And so reciprocity kicks in when you give to other people. And so that book is predominantly about how do you do that in your village meaning your sphere of influence of the people that that you're in contact with. And so I developed this thing I call be the mayor of your village. So you want to be the go-to guy for what for your area of expertise within your people, so that when somebody in my case thinks a mortgage, call Beach, so
Right.
that's what that whole book's about. And then the second book that I wrote was Buzz. And what I realized was there's a conversation going on about you in the community, and you may or may not be aware of that conversation. So I remember I went down, I was talking to these real estate agents, and I finally asked them, I'm like, Miss Turner, I've known you my whole life. I went to high school with your daughter. I'm a pretty good mortgage guy. Why have you never sent me any business, And she's like, well, I've never gotten over the fact that you trenched my yard in high school, And I'm like, but that was 20 years ago, Or another lady was mad at me because I didn't invite her daughter to the prom. Another lady was mad at me because she wanted me to room with her son in college. And I said, no, I'm rooming with another guy. So people hold these grudges sometimes in local communities. And But then I realized, so there's a buzz about me, but there's also a buzz about my company. Like if I work for IBM, they might like me as a salesperson, but they might dislike IBM, or they might
Right.
like, or the opposite. And so people need to understand there's a conversation going on. And then how can you change that conversation? How can you address the bad buzz and make it good buzz? And then there's the thing I call dripping the buzz. What we don't do is when we're in a conversation with people, we don't drip in our greatness. Because if I don't tell you about things that I've done, then there's no way that you know in order to go out and tell other people about me. So I have to learn to slowly drip that in conversations with other people about things that I think are important, because I've got to give you that information for you to be able to repeat that information.
Right.
And
Right.
then the third book I wrote was called The Tapes You Play in Your Head. And I realized that the game changer for most of us is the internal conversation we're having. Are we having a positive conversation or a negative conversation? And most of us are having more negative talk than we're having positive talk. So how do you change that conversation, and what are some steps to do that? And so that's what the third book's about.
That's actually a pretty powerful one. That, I mean, that's biblically based. I mean, there's been all kinds of books about what you say to yourself and personal affirmations and self-image, self-worth, and how it's affected by that. That's a really powerful topic.
Proverbs 23:7, how a man thinketh in his heart, so he will be.
Yeah, that's a powerful one
That's
most
kind of
people
where
don't
that
get.
came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever
And you,
read a book by a guy named James Allen? It was written like in
yeah,
1890. And a lot of people
yeah.
hadn't read it. It's online books, like 40 pages in old English, but that's his whole thing.
As a Man Thinketh.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
great
it.
book. It's one of
It's
the
a
first
great
books
book.
my daughter pulled off my bookshelf when she was probably 14, because I had this giant
Oh,
bookshelf of books, and she said, "What's a good book I can read, Daddy?" And so I pulled off the little book and gave her that. I said, "This is one you need to read first. You can do it in 10 minutes." And she was like, "That was the best book." She's probably read it, I don't know, 20 times in the last 10 years. So,
that's fantastic.
great book.
More people
Yeah.
need to get their kids to read that book.
And don't you have a fourth book you're in the middle of writing right now?
Yeah, so I kind of finished it. It's in proof mode. It's called A Few Big Ideas. So what I realized is, when I go out and I speak and stuff, usually the guy that's hiring you to speak, he's got a message or certain thing he's trying to get over, a theme for the year, stuff like that. But I'm always thinking, but if I'm in the audience, I just need some nuggets to take home, man. If you give me
Right.
at least one nugget that can help me change my business. So I started writing down those nuggets, and most of those nuggets come from coaching or mentoring other people. What are some things that you can do that might get
Well,
you
do
going?
share, Steve. Give us some of the nuggets.
So the first one is, I came up with this idea called the top 100.
Okay.
So make a list of the top 100 people that you don't know that you want to meet next year. And these people have nothing to do with your typical person. Like for me, a typical person would be to meet a real estate agent. So I'm not trying to meet, one-on-one prospects. I'm just trying to meet people in the community. And the more of an influencer they are in the community, the better it is for me. So like maybe you don't know your mayor or your city council person. Maybe you don't know your kid's principal. Maybe you go to the same dry cleaners and you've never met the person that owns the dry cleaners. Maybe you have a restaurant you go to and you really don't know the owner of the restaurant. Those are people in the community that you need to meet. Maybe it's a policeman, maybe it's a fireman, maybe it's
Hmm.
a business you drive by and you go, man, that looks cool, and that guy's business is hopping. There's a lot of cars. I'd like to know about that.
Hmm.
So I started doing that every year, and it's been fabulous. And I just go to people and I go, hey man, I've just wondered about your business. I love it. It's great. Or I patronize it or whatever. I'd love to know about it. And so one of my concepts is don't go to people with your agenda, go to people with your assets. And so
Hmm.
I'm going to people and saying, hey, I'd love to meet you. I've got a mortgage company. I do a couple hundred loans a year, and some of those people might need what you do, or might want to know about this school. Can I have them call you? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm never leading with, hey, I'm here to meet you because I want you to do a mortgage with me. And so then my
Right.
guard's always down, theirs down. So top 100 is one of my favorite. Other thing is, I call it A to G. And so in the old days, when I first got in the mortgage business and it was slow, I went in and talked to one of my mentors guy named Ed Wheeler. And I said, Ed, I said, what are you doing in a slow time? He said, well, I used to be in this business, and the guy used to say, if you slow, get your Rolodex out. That was back when we had those Rolodexes.
Yeah, I remember my Rolodex.
Get your Rolodex out. He said, start at A and just start calling everybody. He said, you'll never get to G before you'll have a deal. And I've done that a billion times, and it works. If you just start calling people, and none of the people that you called will call you about a deal, but if you just start, it's like we used to say, the mortgage gods will smile on you if you just do that simple task. And I do that all the time. I'm having a slow day. I'm like, all right, and I just pull out my phone. I just look at
Well, hold on a second. What about H through Z? You never call these people. They think you've forgotten about them.
Sometimes, yeah. No, what I do is like I go, okay, I stopped at, I don't know, H or something, I'm going to start at H and I'll go that way. And sometimes I'll start at Z and work backwards. But yeah, you're right. I've changed that now. And what I've done is I put everybody I know on my calendar with a time to call them. So everybody I know gets typically at least one call a year from me. So now I'm doing A through G on a daily basis, and it takes some of that roughness out of it. But anyway, it's a great little thing to do. And then the other thing I tell people about is go pro in your sport. So it's like I was reading a book and the guy was talking about, hey, how many high school kids go to college and play football? And then how many of those go to pro? Mm-hmm. And then if you go to, how many of those go to the Pro Bowl, right? That's the ultimate. And are the people going to the Pro Bowl doing the same things that the people that didn't go to the Pro Bowl go to? And the answer is no, they're doing extra stuff, right? Mm-hmm. You take a guy like Jerry Rice, right? He's training, running up and down sand hills. He's the first guy to start flipping those big tractor tires. Anyway, he's take ballet lessons. They're doing all this extracurricular stuff, watching more film. They're just trying to get better. They're trying to be the best they can at their sport. And I think enough people out there are just going through the motions, and they're not saying, hey, I need to be the best guy in my sphere, in my village, at what I do. What are the things, where am I deficient? And so one of the things I do is I talk about being 360 around you. So like if I'm a mortgage guy, do I know a lot about surveys? Do I know a lot about appraisals? Do I know a lot about real estate closings? Do I know a lot about being a real estate agent? And if I don't, then I need to call my appraiser and say, hey, dude, I want to ride with you a day. I want to spend time learning what you're seeing, how the order comes in, how you decide what's a good comp, what's not. So that way I'm smarter when I'm talking to my customer because I know that side of the business, and most people don't do that. So like when my son, when he came on, the first thing I did is I said, you're going to go spend a day with the appraiser, you're going to go spend a day with a closing attorney, you're going to spend a day with a surveyor. So that's a really good thing. And you get to be, if you're growing in your business at trying to be the best, most smartest guy you can, you're gonna feel more confident. Therefore, you're gonna get more business.
Well, let me ask you this. You're talking about this. Well, hold on. Let me text you. You talk about this A to G and reaching out. I mean, we don't use Rolodexes anymore. Today we use social media, right? So has that changed? Are you still like physically going back into your contact list, or do you rely on social media to push that message out to bigger audiences?
So I call them developing marketing habits. So you develop a habit. Once you start something to make it a habit, once it becomes a habit, you add another marketing thing. So one of the first things I did is I said, I'm going to start a habit of doing a newsletter. And every time I meet somebody, they're going on that newsletter. Then I'm going to start a habit of trying to call everybody I know on a regular basis. So I put them in my calendar. I took the 5,000 people that were in my phone and I put them 1 or 2 on every day of the year. So that Brian Will's going to show up at some time on my calendar, and I'm going to say, yeah, I want to talk to Brian today, or no, maybe I'll move him off and talk to him next week. But once a year, you're going to get a phone call from me because you're one of my contacts. So that once that became a habit, I moved on to the next one. The next one was, all right, I'm going to post on social media. I'm going to post on Facebook once a week, and then once a day. Now what we do is we have a video day. So I have a guy that I hired that comes in a half a day. Once a month, we sit down, my son and I, and we knock out mortgage videos just as fast as we can. And we got to where we do them so much, it's like one takers, right? And we'll knock out 10 or 15 a piece. And then that guy will post those through the month, and then we do it again. And then we learned to do them as education. We started just doing them. Then we said, no, the key is to educate your customer, because then if you can teach them something, then they think you're smarter. And then in addition to that, there's always something new to talk about going on in your industry, in your industry. So now what we do is we're conscious about when somebody calls us and they ask us a question, hey, what's the rate? If I get that like 2 times this week, then I make a note of that. And then on video day, I'm going to talk about rates, or, hey, how much should I pay in closing costs, or how much earnest money should I put at? Whatever the question is, I'm writing that down. And then that's a minute or less video. So that's another habit, is to sit down and do that. So I have like 10 or 15 of these marketing habits that just occur all the time, because it's just like brushing my teeth. I just do it. So that's how
Interesting.
I do it.
Do you think, and I talk a lot about the difference between self-employed and business owners and scaling and building intrinsic value. Do you think that your business has the ability to move on if you personally stop doing it? I understand your son's doing it as well, but
It's hard. It would be very hard. So I had at one time, I had probably the second largest mortgage brokerage firm in the state. And then the crash happened in '09. Everybody left. They couldn't make money. It came down to just me. My wife became my processor. And that's when I made a change. I was reading some stuff, and it's like either you're growing a business to sell it, or it's a lifestyle business. There's only so many exit strategies, right? And so I decided that time to be like the local family doctor in the community, or the local CPA. It's a lifestyle kind of business. I don't need a big business anymore, because in the mortgage business, you can only sell a mortgage company at a peak. And it's hard to want to get out at the peak, because things are really trucking and you're making money, and the multiples aren't there, unless you've got a tremendous amount of people, a real ingrained marketing system that's not dependent upon the loan officers, because
Mhm.
that's really what you're buying, is the loan officer. So
Right.
um, there aren't many of those that are real valuable in my world. So I just decided to do that, and said my hope was that one of my kids wanted to get in the business, and then I could transition to them picking up where I left off, and that's happened. So that's my exit strategy, is each year I'm selling my son 10% of my business, so that in the next 10 years it'll be his, and I'll work for him if I'm, still want to work.
Interesting. So this is the last business you're going to do?
No, no. It's funny, because he and I were sitting here talking last week, and he's like, Dad, we got all this data, we got all this social media, we got all these people that we know. Why aren't we doing a side hustle? And I go, that's a damn good question. We need to do a side hustle. So we've been scheming for the last couple of weeks, and I actually had a friend of mine showed up yesterday and goes, I've had this idea. And I went, oh my God, I've had a similar idea. We could put these two ideas together. So I'm working that now in my mind. Hey, is this a viable business that I could do, that I wouldn't have to be there, but I can lend my expertise to? And I think it is. I think I've got 2 or 3 I'm looking at. So
Typical entrepreneur, your brain never stops, right?
yeah, yeah,
So,
that's
so let
right.
me ask you something. All this experience, 30, 40 years of experience, I understand you also go out and you do speeches, you teach classes or something like that. Talk to me about what you do there.
Well, what's fun for me is to go talk to people. My purpose in life is to help other people get from where they are to where they want to go. So if I can go somewhere and speak to some people and give them some of my stories and my experience, and it can help somebody in the audience, I'm all in. So it's fun for me to go speak. So I get a lot of people that are really professional service people that I do a lot of speaking for. So it'd be like financial advisors, bankers, real estate groups, insurance, PNC or commercial insurance. So people that are calling on
Hmm.
people in their community, small business people. I do a lot of coaching and mentoring. Most of those are free. I just do it because they're friends of mine in the community. But I do some outside coaching. But I love going someplace and speaking, because I'm in a weird situation. I'm right here in Alpharetta, Georgia, and my office is behind my house, and I don't get to go, right? So when somebody calls me and says, hey man, can you be in Chicago next week? I'm like, I'm coming now, baby. I'm ready to go. So for me, that's fun to get out and go do that. And so I do a good bit of that. So,
Right.
and
So I got
it's
two
fun.
questions as we wrap this up. So I ask these questions a lot to folks. So best piece of advice you can give somebody who wants to start a business. And the second one is best piece of advice you would give somebody who's trying to scale their business. two different people, right? Someone who wants to start and someone who is scaling. What's the best piece of advice you could give them? I sprung this on you. I know I got you on the spot here.
So if you're going to start a business, you got to figure out where in the box you fit, like the E-Myth kind of box, right? And you got to say, I'm about to start a business, and if it gets to a level that I want, I'm gonna start a restaurant. And right now I might be the chef and the bottle washer and the waiter and blah blah blah. But which box do I fit in the best? And so I'm going to circle that box. And my objective is I'm going to do all these boxes right now, but my objective is to just focus on that box and hire these other people as soon as I can to do that job for me. So that was really good
100%.
advice
I call this
for
the
me.
four personalities in my book, and I stole some of that from the E-Myth. But yes,
Yeah.
who are you in your business and who are you not? Too many people try to be someone they're not, and that's why they fail. They need to
And
focus on who
like,
they are.
and like I was telling you about when we were talking with this guy I just had lunch with, it's like I told him, I said, so you got it. You know, if I owned your business, which box do I think you belong in and where you bring the most value to the company? And that's where you need to be. That might be the chef. It might be the guy that's ordering the food. I don't know, but that's where you need to end up as quickly as possible. And then scaling the business, I think the best advice I've gotten on that is the rule, what I call the rules of the game. And I read this somewhere and I can't find this anywhere where I read it, but the guy was talking about in professional sports, you never see a coach complain when he gets fired. You hardly ever see a player complain when he gets, they put him on the bench. And he said the reason why is everybody's extremely clear what the rules of the game are. If you're the offensive coordinator and you're not scoring more points than the other team, you can't stay. If you're the defensive guy and you're getting worn out, if you're a lineman, if you're an offensive lineman, your offensive line coach is going through the film and saying, if you didn't do what you were supposed to 95% of the plays, you can't stay. We got to bring somebody else in because we can't have a successful thing. The coach knows when he's hired by the rich owner, hey, we went, 5-5 last year. If you can't get me 7 or 8 wins this year, you can't stay. And
Mm-hmm.
so nobody complains. And so I think the biggest problem we have is when we hire people, we don't lay out the rules of the game clearly enough to them to where they know, hey, if you can't, if you do this, you get to stay. If you do this, if you step out of bounds or you can't score, you can't stay. If you do these things and you're really successful here, here's how you get paid more. Here's how you move up the ladder more. And so people don't really know. And I think entrepreneurs, they know that they know what that looks like, but the person that's working for them doesn't know what that looks like. It's not really, really clear. And so as I've gone through all these businesses and hired all these people, that's the biggest takeaway for me is if I'm going to really make my business work, and today I have that with my employees, they're real clear on how they get to keep their job and how they lose it and how they get paid more. And so nobody's having that conversation. And if they're not up to speed, I never have to fire them. They come to me and say, hey, I can't do what you want me to do. I need to go find another job. And they quit. So I don't have to
Crystal
fire
clarity.
anybody.
Crystal clarity on communication and
Crystal.
what the job takes.
Yes.
And that's how we
100%.
succeed and or that's going to be how we fail. That was awesome. Good note to end on. Steve, any last words?
Yeah. Here's the biggest,
All
one of the
right.
biggest lessons I'm learning in business is when the ship's going down, when things are going slow or your business is not successful, the number one thing you got to do is shuck your shit as fast as possible. Because I've been there 4 or 5 times, and you want to hold on to that house, and you want to hold on to that car, and you want to hold on to that lake house, and you want to hold on to that boat, those 4-wheelers and motorcycles or whatever your
Those
crap is.
big anchors you got.
If things are going south, sell that crap. And the faster you sell everything you have, like even if you got to move in a rental, the faster you do that, the faster you recover.
That is an absolute fact. Those anchors will take you down. Listen, Steve, I appreciate you being on the show today. It was a good show. Uh, everybody, I appreciate you listening to the Dropout Multi Millionaire. Come back next week. And as I always say at the end of every episode, remember, you have to be in the game to win the game. So let's get in the game. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you would like to get more information on either one of my books or my one-on-one coaching programs, you can find me at brianwillmedia.com or thedropoutmm.com.